So, if you've known me or if you've been around for any length of time, you know that I have been an Airtable and Asana girly since my social media agency days. That is how I operated my entire business, all of my content creation, and arguably what I did in the last 6 years. Now, I have this year officially switched to Notion. I religiously used Airtable and Asana to manage so many different aspects of my business and for client work. But now that I have officially made the switch over to Notion, I will never look back. And maybe this video caught your attention because you're just like me and you've tried a million different tools, a million different apps, and you always have your comfort platforms, and you seem to see that everybody else loves using Notion. Maybe you've tried it a couple of times. I know I've tried it for years and could never quite figure it out. And for a long time, I just thought Notion was too complicated. I would spend too much time trying to make things look pretty. And I really just needed to focus on different areas of my business and not worry so much about learning Notion. And as somebody with ADHD, I felt like I had shiny object syndrome anytime I opened Notion. I would sit there for hours and just play around with it, trying to make it look good. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Notion can work for your business. And now I have finally jumped on the bandwagon, and I see why so many people love and use this platform. I want to talk about why I resisted Notion for such a long time. As I alluded to already, I always felt like anytime I opened Notion, it felt like I was creating a website from scratch. There were too many different options. You could add images and graphics and plugins and this, that, and the other. And I was like, this is truly a blank workspace, and I don't have the time for that. When I was building my business over the last 6 years, and over the last 5, I was using Airtable, Asana, things like that. Those type of tools provided me structure so that I could plug and play, I could jump in. I didn't have to necessarily build something. So that is why Notion always felt so overwhelming, because you open the program and it's like, here's a blank page. Now do whatever you want. And for me, that felt so frustrating. Having that many limitless options really just put a stop sign in front of my face. And then seeing how everybody else's Notion dashboards, they were so cute and organized and pretty. And I'm like, I don't know how they got there. How do they have the time to even get started with Notion? So I simply just stuck with what I knew, which was in Airtable, it was similar to an Excel spreadsheet. It was more of a database structure, which again, most of us are familiar with. If you pursue any type of marketing or business degree, we are very comfortable inside of spreadsheets. So Airtable felt like a natural fit in terms of client work and content creation and things like that. And then I would use Asana for task management because, again, there were not very many options. It's create a card, add some tasks, maybe some subtasks, add some details, and that's it. You check the task off when it's done, maybe assign a due date, maybe assign a person, but it was very, very straightforward. So I would always fall back on those programs and those software, and I didn't want to overextend myself by trying to learn something brand new from scratch. But honestly, at the end of last year, when I decided that those two platforms were no longer working for me in the way that I needed them to, I just started learning about Notion. I told myself, I'm going to give myself an afternoon and I'm going to see how far I get. And I actually came across Thomas Frank Explains videos, and he basically has an entire Notion course for free on YouTube. And I went through only one playlist, and it took me just a couple of hours, and I learned everything I needed to know about Notion, at least at this stage. I learned the basics in order to get started with having this software house everything for my business. And as I really started learning more about Notion, I realized that I was hacking my way through things and making it more complicated by trying to maintain Airtable and Asana and a couple of other tools that I tried out. And none of them were working. None of them were talking to each other. And I ended up realizing I was wasting more time and money than I actually needed to. So before I show you exactly how I made Notion work for my business, I want to kind of give you a behind the scenes look at what I was doing and why it worked at the time and why it made me switch. So specifically when it comes to using Airtable, I had different Airtable bases for basically every aspect of my business, but the primary one that I used it for was my content creation workflow. It truly housed every single part of my workflow, allowed me to collaborate with my content manager. When I was managing social media for others, I was able to have clients in there. And again, the tool worked very well for a very long time for what I needed it for. Now, with Airtable specifically though, It has become much more complicated. There are now automations and dashboards and so much in that software, so much I wasn't paying for, and the price started getting higher and higher and higher. And I was like, I'm not even using half these features. There's got to be a better way to organize all of this content, organize everything about my business that revolves around client deliverables and that content creation. And then with Asana specifically, the only reason why I didn't have task management in Airtable, for me, my brain didn't work that way. Anytime I tried to build out a project management database or something like that in Airtable, it just, for some reason, my brain could not get it to work. I know plenty of people that use Asana for task management, for client relation management, and things like that. But for me, it just didn't work. Inside of Asana, I loved having a to-do list and having different views of things and being able to track projects and have repeatable daily tasks that I could check off. So again, I would use Airtable to manage the content, client deliverables, and then I had Asana managing my day in and my day out, my schedule, my projects, my tasks. At one point, when I had a business manager, she was in there organizing things as well. And it's just having those two different things just made sense for a very, very long time. But as we know, both of those software have become very expensive, have integrated a ton of new tools that I just wasn't using. And again, as I was making the switch into Notion, the way that I approached it was, okay, I'm going to go buy a bunch of Notion templates and just see how people are using it. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos and I was so overwhelmed. And I quickly realized that people made Notion far more complicated than it needed to be. All these templates that I bought, as I started learning more about how Notion functions, they were creating things far too complicated. I remember there was one Notion template that I purchased that there was a back-end database that housed every single piece of information within that big template. And if you messed up just one thing, the template basically crashed. And I was like, I don't need that energy in my life. And then there were others that had plugins that I would have to purchase and just so many automations, so many different things. But when I truly sat down to figure out Notion for my business, it made a whole lot more sense. So the very first thing that I did in order to optimize my Notion is to ensure that I had consistency across other platforms and other software that I was using. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, I have a very simple system for how I like to house all of my information. So it starts with like operations, brand assets, content creation, product services, and there's more. And basically this mimics the exact folder structure that I have inside of Canva. It mimics the exact same folder structure that I have in Drive. And this just helped ensure my ADHD brain to like be able to rein all of this information in, because if you've been in Notion before, you know you can create team spaces on pages, on databases, on like so many different things. And I wanted to make sure that I knew the exact process and like where I could find information. So I simply just mimicked how I have it in every single other software. And while I spent hundreds of dollars on templates, and honestly, I don't use a single one of them, I was able to learn like key design principles that I couldn't really find anywhere else or like find tutorials on. It was simply just like going into other people's templates and just seeing how they use them. So one of my favorite things is to have like these quick, I don't even know what they're called, like backlinks, if you will. So in case I'm working on like my long form content calendar and I want to look at my overall content strategy, or I want to take a look at my short form content. Yes, it is over here, but let's say I had this condensed. I can easily click on this and it brings me into my short form content calendar. And again, I have some kind of navigation to direct me back. Now, another fun thing that I learned from people are these like fun buttons. Like I just want to quickly add a new content idea. I click on this button. It automatically brings in the template that I need. I can start to create it and it has everything that I need with the click of a button. I don't have to go in and create a new card or a new page. These buttons have automations and it'll do it for me. Another fun design feature, I was wanting to really plan out my content, as you see here, but I was like, how do people make it look good? Like I need sections for notes and captions and things like that. And when I was previously using Airtable, there were designated columns and rows for those kind of things. And I was like, this truly was a blank page. So I had, I learned this design tactic from another template that I had where they did these fun call out boxes. And now I know exactly like where I need to put information. I also really loved the idea of having databases. And the one thing that I was missing from Airtable and Asana are like different views. And once I learned that you can also do this in Notion, I'm able to see, like, especially with my content, different ways of viewing this. So I obviously have a calendar view. I have like a workflow view where I can drag and drop these cards in between each different status. But then I can see the content within each status organized by date. I can see what needs to be recorded, that kind of thing. So again, just learning these key design principles from other templates was super, super helpful for me, even if I didn't end up using that template. And then the last thing that really helped my ADHD brain, especially making the transition from like Airtable and Asana, there were like quick actions, if you will, where I could just click a button and add a new row, it would add a new task, things like that. And as I learned how to manage projects a little bit better inside of Notion, again, we have those quick buttons, but I can also quickly and easily access certain databases. And the last thing is, especially with my ADHD, I was like, I haven't made anything look pretty. I have just enough callouts. It's organized in just enough of a way that it's clear what each of these databases or each of these pages do. I haven't spent extra times other than maybe emojis here and there. I'm not doing covers. I'm not doing anything crazy. But what I needed were different ways to view what I needed to view and have quick access, because with Airtable and Asana, they were built in a way that I could click a button, see a different view, click a button, add a record, that kind of thing. So obviously I've already kind of walked you guys through. I have like these quick buttons, but in my tasks and projects specifically, I need to see what is due today. I need to know exactly what needs to be done. I might need to be able to take some quick notes. I need to see where things are at in progress. And so I just built this out in a simple enough way to mimic what I already had in Airtable and in Asana, just made it a little bit more friendlier in Notion. Looking back, I wish I hadn't waited so long to make the switch into Notion, and this is just a quick preview. It's not like a full tutorial. I am still by no means a Notion expert, but if you feel like it's too complicated or too hard to learn, believe me, I have been there. Start simple, focus on just the things that you need. Don't worry about all the different functionalities and making it pretty. And leave your questions in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week.